That's really great advice. The perspective idea of like how you wake up and what are you looking forward to, and the point about having to have a student to be an instructor or something that it's easy. You know, I've been running a school for 20 years, but it's easy for me to forget that. You know, I appreciate my routine of waking up and my meditation and my stretches and my workout and this and that. But now that I'm going on Zoom, it's different when I'm jumping on the class and there's only like 4 or 5 people on Zoom versus, you know, the dojo of 30 people that we were used to. Do you have anything in your toolbox and besides mindset that could help in this day and age with regards to teaching things digitally?
Well, I think that so you can't open your school yet, right?
No, can't open our schools, so we're having to do it. We've got some parking lot training that we're doing. We're doing that once a week, but it's real hot, so not a ton of people are coming to that. And then we've got these digital classes, and I'm infinitely grateful for everybody who participates in all of our classes. You know, as an instructor, I'm so grateful for all of our students that we still have, but would love to enhance our reach. You know, in the digital age, like there's no reason that we shouldn't be reaching even more, because, you know, we were always tied to geographically who could make it into our classes, and now, you know, we could send our classes out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that awesome? So here's the thing, guys. Before COVID, and for me personally, the last 4 or 5 years, you know, because I have multiple streams of income. You know, I have leverage in my life. Okay. But I've been looking at that everything's changing. I'll give you an example. We used to go to Blockbuster. Where's Blockbuster?
It's gone.
There's Netflix, there's Hulu. So this has been coming a long time ago. Okay. And this is not going to go away, right? Look at.
Are you referring to the virtual dynamic? Is that what you're leaning towards?
Yes. Because if you think about Amazon, in my son's house, my grandkids, every day there's a package at the door. And I'm going like another package, another package, another package. You know, it's the way. So the first thing we got to do is look at it and say, okay, it's not going to go away. So this platform in this context is very important, okay, for us to really really grab a hold of it and embrace it. Okay, so let's say that COVID is in such a position that that we are now allowed to open our schools and people can go to schools and there's no problem. This is still not going to go away, because Amazon's not going to go away. Netflix is not going to go away. You know, Instagram's not going to go away. Zoom is never going to go away. You know, et cetera, et cetera. So that's number one. You have to embrace this, and it's a different context. So things have to be taught a little bit differently. And there's a lot of experimentation because this is new to a lot of people. Okay, so but in lots of like Amazon and other things that I do, we're booming. We're booming because this platform allows us to touch more people faster, quicker, and it's easier, more accessible. So there's all these wonderful elements that we can now deliver what it is that we're talking about in this context. Okay. And we can talk more about that. But what I want to do is, here's the question I would like to ask everybody. And I didn't come up with this. There's a guy named Chung Park that of Cold Springs that was going through some of this stuff. And he had wonderful advice, and Mr. Silva had wonderful advice on a lot of this stuff too. The first thing that I would ask everybody is, your gym, your school, is it under a fitness gym category, or is it in a more of a professional service? See, when you first open the school, these are critical things. See, you don't want to be classified as a gym, an exercise place, okay? Because if you do, then you're going to fall into the LA Fitness, you know, Platinum Fitness model. So if you go into your school and you look at, you know, your business license, for example, you want to look on there and see where do you fall? Where do you fall? Am I a professional service, or, you know, am I a fitness gym category? Because if you're in a fitness gym category, that's why you can't open your school. because now you're not a professional service. So if your license is professional service, so your LLC or Shop S corporation, needs to be in that professional service category, and so you need to call the Department of Agriculture, and look at that. Call your local, city hall, whatever, and find out, how to change that, or let them know that you're not a fitness gym place. You are a professional service. You are, like, right now they're trying to open, and there's two sides to it. People are butting heads with it, but they're trying to open our educational system. So as a professional service, you are an educational program. Okay, this is real important. So first of all, look at that. And if you're under professional services, then you can go downtown and say, I'm a professional service. I'm not a gym or fitness. So they're immediately not going to be able to put you in that category. And maybe you can just open tomorrow, So that's the first thing that I would do. Okay, do a little bit of homework with that. People, like folks, parents, like my grandkids, I got 4 grandkids, 3 granddaughters and 1 grandson. Different ages, 15, the twins are 15, twin girls. My middle granddaughter's 11, my grandson's 5. My son and my daughter-in-law made the decision that they're not going to go to school right now. They're going to do virtual. But not everyone can do virtual, So here's the thing. There are schools out there, okay, in different organizations, and what they're doing is, because they're under professional service, and depending where you live, like on this coast where I live, LA Fitness, and they're open, okay? So if you have a martial arts school, you can open the school here, as long as you had safety features involved. The key is safety features, and have to be very specific and all that. But going back to opening your school, people have after-school programs. Okay, these parents need someplace where they can send their kids. Okay, but because a lot of these parents don't have computers at home or laptops. Okay, not everybody has that, or a good streaming service. So they need help with that. So your school can become that. It can become, where you can be there, offer in a safe zone, X amount of students, where they can come in. Now they know you, they know they're safe. They know that you're going to follow safeguards that you put in place, that you have to be very specific and very clear about and present to your students, so they would come back, because they want that guarantee, right? Because us as my grandfather, I want my grandkids to be safe. So I want those safeguards and I want those guarantees, because kids are kids, right? So those things are very important. So you could, and a lot of schools are doing this, and that's how they're paying and staying open, So I would recommend that direction, and
I guess what you're saying as well is everybody, no matter where they are in the United States that's watching this particular interview, they basically got to look at what their own regulations are in their city and state to determine what's going to and how things are going to be able to function and what parameters they need to, either be able to reopen or to hold off on reopening, depending on what category they fall under.
Absolutely.
Right? Because we've got several folks that watch this program that either are running schools themselves and have different, parameters that they have to run those schools under during the pandemic. Whereas like Hardy, you're still running everything online. You've got very limited classes that you have that are actually in-person classes, correct?
Yeah, so we're only doing outdoor in-person classes, and our unique challenge in North Carolina is that our governor has said fitness facilities, and then he has lumped martial arts schools underneath that. So we've thought about a lot of what you're saying there, Juan, with changing how we put ourselves out there, because we're not listed as a gym in our state. There's some state regulations to be a gym and that sort of stuff. But our governor sort of challenged that. So what we can do is offer camps, and we've been offering some camps during the summer, and we've got a plan to start offering some day camps to do just what you were saying, and host a place for these kids to come in and do their homework and break it up with some martial arts training in the middle. So we're in that situation. But what we were also facing is, in most of our polls, when we've talked to our students, a lot of our students are quite scared about the proximity. We're facing that. There's a fear and a rightful fear with 170,000 dead from COVID that they don't want to risk that that proximity.
Well, there has to be safeguards, right?
For sure.
Okay. And those safeguards have to be outlined in a very specific way, right? And so we go into details about that. But these safeguards, you have to educate the parents. You have to educate your students. And then once you send those things out there, you have to showcase how you're doing that consistently, okay? And feed that to your students over and over again, okay?
So what you're basically saying, Juan, is that, through education and through constant communication, maybe there is a possibility that if they see that a club or a school, no matter what their interest it could be in the training that we're specifically talking about, but let's expand that a little bit. Let's talk about life in general during this pandemic. If we are, which Hardy does and his team does an amazing job of, if we're constantly communicating and constantly telling you, even to a point of nauseum, of how we're doing things safely, how we're staying within the parameters of the rules and restrictions that we're given, that the way that I'm seeing it is the challenge is, how do we combat or compete against this subconscious and conscious fear of the unknown possibilities of what could happen if I attend a class, if I go to this workshop, if I go into this place of business. I think that is an important aspect that, from what I'm listening to what you're saying, Juan, is that, it's not a matter of how do you communicate, right? Because there's a lot of people, including, Hardy and a lot of To-Shin to organizational schools, because that's the crux of our show and who we kind of cater to right now, is they know how to do these things. But what you're saying is it's the frequency and the repetitiveness to let everybody feel safe and secure in knowing that you're following these guidelines. Does that make sense?
You have to showcase that. You have to showcase that. And here's the thing. You could go, okay, the school's open. This has to be like, you just open your school. You just open your school. So there has to be, you got to start like a campaign that leads up to, where it crescendos into that we are now open. Okay, we are now open in, let's say, these 3 different areas. Okay, one is you come to school and you train outdoors. Another one, we train in your neighborhood, at your local park, outdoors. I know folks that are going to people's homes in the neighborhood where there's, they say there's a half a dozen to a dozen students in that one specific development, and they'll do a class right in, in their driveway, and it's slowly exposure, and you're staying in front of them. I know, like John Gaston up in Springfield, Illinois, he has like 700 students, right? He has had a major, huge celebration, graduation, belt testing at a local park, and he ran it a very specific way, where people, there was like different, you could see like different groups on Facebook and stuff like that. But then he made it very, like, he did it on Facebook. He showed it on Facebook. He showcased, he built up to that event, and then during the event and after the event. So people that weren't there, because maybe they felt that way, they could still log in on Zoom. See, what you have to do is include people, include them. Like if you, for example, in the martial arts schools, and you have a graduation where people are being promoted to their next level, and only a third of the school is being promoted, then 2/3 of the school is left out. So you got to include everybody. Otherwise, if they're not part of it, then they're going to drop out, or they're not going to show up. So you have to include them. Like today, it was hard for me not to be here because I was included. So you got to include. You got to find a way to include them, and they're like, if they're level 2 or level 1 or level 3, you have to find a way. Okay, even though a major part of this level 2, level 3 are not graduating or getting something, there has to be something that they're part of that says, hey, I need to be there. Hey, why don't you bring the ice? We need ice. Can you bring the ice? You know, hey, we're gonna need some Cokes. Can you bring the Cokes? So now it's like that kind of a thing, where I'm trying to give an example where if you can include,
Yeah, you basically everybody's there's inclusivity, not just with the staff facilitating, but everybody, the community becomes part of it.
yes. So then more people are going to show up. So if you find a way to do that through Zoom, there's some folks are not going to come to your school and attend because they're just too scared. They're not going to. People regulate the risk factor, and people have different risk, levels. So there's those people that you have to make sure that you are speaking to and including through these Zoom trainings, etc. So in my business, we do a lot of events at hotels. There's some people, they're never going to go to a hotel with me. They just not. They could jump on a Zoom call with me. And there's some people who never jump on a Zoom call, but they'll come to my school. So you got to look at what context and what your audience is, and then tap into that.
Really great advice, man. And just looking at the feed, people are really into this. I wanted to let everybody. Kelly actually beat me to it, that if you're watching and this information is, and you want to hear it again, all of the Ninja Everyday YouTube channel after it's all said and done. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. So speaking of, this type of conversation and what, the path that your life went on, Juan, in the late 90s into the 2000s, and the time that you spent with Greg and with, organizing and building schools, what would you say, or how would you say your training has kind of set you up to move through this pandemic that we're experiencing now? Because you've had, the three of us have had a pretty unique and interesting pathway to where we are now, and the diversity of the directions that our training has gone in. What would you say, with the years and years that you've been training now, how has that prepared you for moments like this pandemic, or moments of, what you might call extreme potential stress? What are some of your takeaways from what you learned through your training?
Well, I remember being in this, what they call Coogee Level 2 with Stephen Hayes at one of Mark Russo's locations in Tampa. And I remember he warned us, like, this can be very stressful on you. And once you learn this Level 2 and you really start working on it, this energy, right? This energy loop and stop breathing and stuff, you can hyperventilate and pass out. So he was telling us all this stuff. And if you do it too much and get so good at it, you can burn out, like overloading a circuit breaker, and all of a sudden you burn out, and guess what? You're burned out, So, and that can happen to us in our lives, where we're burning the candle at both ends, so to speak. At the same time, there's a story from Mark Russo that he went to go train with Stephen Hayes in Ohio, and he hired him for 2 weeks to live with him and train with him 24/7. So Mark Russo went up there. Mark Russo was Rambo back then. He was Rambo. So he was like the most fit guy you can even imagine. I remember Stephen Hayes would throw him and Mark would land on one foot and just stand right back up. Stuff like that. It was like, I was going like, what? How in the world was he doing? He was like a cat. No matter how he was thrown, he landed on his feet somehow. So anyway, so Mark goes to train with Steve Hayes, and then he said Steve Hayes was sleeping like 2 hours a night, like train all day, meditation and train physical, and Stephen Hayes was much older than he was, mid to late 30s, and Russo was, quite a bit younger than he was, and he just couldn't keep up with him. And Mark prided himself being in the best shape, keep up with anything, anybody, whatever, and he actually couldn't do it. And he said, how do you do it? He says, so he told that story during his Coogee Level 2. He says, this is how I do it. In other words, by regulating himself. I never forgot that. So then I moved to Coral Springs, and there's a guy. His name is Mitch Fine. I'm not sure if he's on or not. He's a big guy. He's like, much bigger than me. I'm only 5'9", 185, 109 pounds right now. And I was about 190 back then. And Mitch is like 6'2", 6'3", about 250, 260. And this guy was fighting in the Shidokan. It's like 5 rounds of, you know, like full contact, all that kind of stuff. So he walks in my school. I look at him and he asked me a couple questions and we kind of went at it because he wanted to see if it worked. And I got lucky and I put him down, right? And I told him, if you're coming here to fight, if you want to come and learn, that's great. So I ran him off, right? I ran him off because he wanted to fight. He came back a second time and a third time. Every time it happened that way. And the last time it happened, I said, this is not going to end. And I'm going to call the cops but he would, so hard that I kind of punched him out. I punched him out and he was on the ground and my heart was coming out of my chest because he's a big guy and he's like an MMA fighter back then in the Shidokan. And he was like a sparring partner for some top competitors and stuff. So if you hit him, he liked it. And I remember looking down at Mitch and he was bleeding and he just loved it. He just loved it, and for me my second nature was to control my breathing because of this training, to regulate ourselves. And that's what kept me under control, not because I was better than him, was because he was more excited and I was more calm. And it happened on its own, So those are the things that I learned, training with Stephen Hayes, So when I encounter people, I look at how they're breathing and stuff, and I can tell like if their energy is up, energy is down. Then I kind of look at myself, because a lot of times if someone's energy is high and low and is breathing short, I find myself doing the same thing so I can connect, and then my training is see if I can change their breathing, bring it back down to where I'm at. So those are the kind of things. So breathing is I say critical for all of us, and so here's how it worked for me in a negative way. I was training with a personal trainer because I was fighting Mitch again in my class after like 5 years of being my students. And we ended up on the ground and I got right on top of him and I put my hooks in. And if someone knows about putting your hooks in, put my hooks in, but he's just so big and strong that he just exploded out of there and he destroyed my knee. So I went from being like super active to not being active, but my eating habit didn't change. So then I gained a little bit of weight. So after I got kind of recuperated, I went to get a personal trainer. And then, so this guy, Blaine Lamel, he would get me on the elliptical machine. And then as he was next to me, I was breathing hard. And then as soon as he would leave, I was going, this is too hard. So I started controlling my breathing. And I was able to lower my heart rate, control my breathing, and still keep the numbers up on the machine. And little by little, I got really good at that. And I was going like, oh, this is good ninja training. Then he would come back and I would start breathing hard again. And so then this can work against you, right? You know what I mean? So I gained weight because of that, because here's a negative side of that too. You can lose relationships. I remember I had two good friends, that something happened and under this very stressful situation, and Greg Silva was right there. They were really stressed out. And if they were real stressed out, it was almost as if I was watching them being stressed out and not realizing that I wasn't stressed out. I was just kind of like, it was this dualistic where they're there and I'm here. And I was watching it from out there, even though I was part of the same circle. And it was very interesting, like experience. And I was sitting there and they were screaming and going off and everything. And then they left. And then Greg Silva looked at me, going like, I can't believe you didn't start screaming and everything back. I said, yeah, I know I didn't do that, right? Because it kind of happened to me. It wasn't like I'm so good that I cannot get involved in this heated exchange. I just didn't get involved with the heated exchange. It just happened. And in hindsight, it's the training. It's I regulate myself, and that's, if you look at the jiu-jitsu guys like Hickson Gracie, that's all he talks about. He talks about the breathing, and how important it was. And that was a game changer for him, so I remember Greg Silva telling me that, how did you not get I thought you're going to get up and just punch these guys out. And I was going like, wow, I could have done that, right? But it didn't even occur to me because I was like, I was regulating myself without realizing it. So Other ways that you can regulate yourself is by laughing. Like I use laughter. As soon as I start getting nervous, I start making jokes and laughing, and that kind of regulates me. It gets grounds me up. It's like earth. I get really grounded, and my breathing changes, and I'm able to smile a little bit better. All those kind of things. So those are some examples, like in my life, that I found my training happening right in the moment. Okay, and I don't know if Scott remembers this. We were in my apartment in Coral Springs, and one of our students, his name is Robert, was asking a question, and I told him the best time to fix something is in the moment. And he's go, "Oh, that was so ingenious." And I said, "Well, I didn't come up with it. I heard Stephen Hayes say that." Right? You know what I mean? It's like I heard it from him, so I repeated it. And that's really true. It's regulating yourself, And the last example I want to give about regulating myself, I had a major life event 3 years ago, this month. This month, 3 years and 1 day ago, I had major surgery. I had like open heart surgery, right? And this open heart surgery, yes, I was just as surprised as you. And so the night before, they do a lot of things to you. And you're going like, I can't believe they're doing that to me, right? They're poking you, prodding you. There's a needle that goes in your neck that goes all the way to your heart. So it's about this long and it's about that thick, and you're kind of like, I can't believe this is happening to me. And then when you go from this belief to kind of detaching, it's like that screaming thing that I didn't get involved with. So I just decided not to get involved with the poking and prodding, So it was like a detachment, right? And then after a while, I kind of just didn't fight it no more. I just didn't fight it no more. And so that was a very critical piece for me at this moment in my life where I was absolutely terrified. And so what I was going to tell you, what this is leading to is, I remember it was 4 a.m. At 6 o'clock, they were going to come get me, and they're going to wheel me into this thing. They're going to saw my chest open. They're going to use these pliers, and they're going to destroy my chest. They're going to break parts of the cartilage at the back. It goes into your spine. I mean, I was going to have all this trauma, and they're going to save my life, right? I had no choice. They had to save my life. And by 4 a.m, the fear was gone. And I had said goodbye to my wife. I said, I'll see you I'll see you on the other side. And I know it was the other side, around the bend, on the other side, or the other side of this surgery. But regardless, it was a done deal, And part of what I remember, and a side note, a guy named Terry Gay, who was a world kickboxing champion, he says, you win the fight when you're walking towards the ring, not in the ring. When you're walking towards the ring, that's when you win or lose. So this was what Terry told me. I'm walking down the aisle to get in the ring, and this was life and death. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, the pastor walks in, because our family's Catholic, right? Historically, our family's Catholic. The pastor walks in. I look at him, and the first thing I see was, oh, he's pretty stretched out. He's like worried. And he comes up to me and he grabs my hands, and I said, Father. And he looks at me and said, I really believe this is going to be okay. I got a lot to do afterwards. So, and he looked at me and he kind of shook his head, and he realized that his thoughts were manifesting physically, and his physiology told me everything. And he immediately changed his physiology and became that inspiration, that hope and stuff. And, but I was okay with it. A matter of fact, that night or the night before, Stephen Hayes actually sent me something, and private messaged me, with some encouraging words. And I hadn't talked to him in a long time, but that I never responded to it. But if he listens to this, it meant a lot to me that in those early morning hours where he sent that message to me. But I got to tell you, it was like zero going into the ring, and there was no more fear. And then my conversations with everybody was, afterwards, make sure this happens. I told my wife, afterwards, make sure this happens. So make sure this happens afterwards, because I'm not going to be able to communicate, but I'm going to be going through this. And I'm not going to be able to tell you, So, I was already on the other side. I was already on the other side of this surgery already. in my life. So I don't know what I would do if I didn't have this ability to regulate me, myself, my person, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and uh, it was an incredible uh, time, and so it was fantastic.
It's all that's
Wow.
all great information. What a great story. And you felt like that was the Kuji 2 practice, specifically this sort of energy wheel that helped you regulate your breathing and by extension your overall emotional expression.
It taught me how to breathe.
Taught you how
Because
to breathe.
taught me how to breathe because I remember I was about 19, 20 years old. We were up in Germantown, Ohio with Stephen Hayes, and I was sitting in the barn. And if you never saw pictures of it or ever gone there, Scott knows what I'm talking about. It is like when you walk through, this barn was like over 100 years old, next to some railroad tracks in this small little town with one corner store, one light, and you had to go there to find Stephen Hayes and train with him. And so as soon as you walked in this barn, he had transformed it like you were back a couple hundred years or more into Japan, right? And so I was there and I was watching it. It was a mandala seminar where like it's like two different perspectives, like this like this Elvis coin. There's Elvis on one side, and there's the Elvis gates to his home on the other side. Which one you described it? There's the gates. And this is Elvis. So that you could describe the coin depending on which side you're looking, but it's still the same coin. So this was the seminar was something like that, right? But more in depth, right? And I remember sitting there, and I remember Rumiko Hayes and the two girls, Marissa and Raina, they were kids back then. They were small. They were like the youngest one was like 2, and then and Raina was like my son's age back then. So I was like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years old. So, and there was the stairs, a very steep set of stairs going to like an office on top of the barn, up against the roof of the barn. And I remember Rumiko Hayes was walking up the stairs, and I was looking at her walk. And what caught my eye was that every step, it wasn't like you couldn't tell the steps. It was almost her walking was so smooth that it was almost like she was taking an escalator up. And I was going like this. And Stephen Hayes must have noticed me and a couple of people looking, and he explained what she was doing. I was going like, wow, and so it was an incredible training. That's what I can tell you, right? And he said, she's a better student than I am. So when he said that, I kind of took that to heart, that every time I saw Mark Russo or Bud Malmstrom, or Stephen Hayes, I wrote everything down and I practiced, 6 to 8 hours a day, like a professional athlete for years. Like the first 10 to 12 years of my training, that's how I trained. And I was young enough that my body could deal with it. I was in my 20s, so that's what I did. So I remember those words Stephen Hayes said. And so then I tried to do the same thing Rumiko was doing,